Hello, all. This is a very brief overview of music history. First, I want you to have a pretty solid knowledge of basic European and American history. You need this because to understand music is to understand history. Basically, the video I've also posted is called Music as a Mirror. And music really does reflect what's going on in society at large. So it's hard to really understand what's going on with music if you don't understand just some basic history. So I'm just going to briefly go through that now. First of all, do you know what zero is, or approximate zero, meaning the birth of Christ? Following that, the fall of the Roman Empire, say circa around 500 AD, and what that does to European society. Okay, it throws them into basically barbarism, this period of time we call the Dark Ages. And how does that affect music? Well, the church, the Catholic Church basically becomes the only bastion for sanity during that period of time. And so they're the place with the art and the safety, and so music is mostly about God and being very solemn and prayerful. Okay, in the 1300s, we have big changes in that there's the Black Plague, and that affects Europe economically. So many workers die off that there starts to be a supply and demand issue, and now essentially rich people are now having to pay poor people to pay them more to do work, and so we start having almost like a middle class. And now that the middle class is no longer in survival strategy all the time, they can start thinking about broader things like science and intellect and music. Also during the 1300s, you have the Great Schism. You have three different people claiming to be Pope at one time, and that begins to shake people's belief in the Catholic Church just a little bit. And so that is really the catalyst for the 1400s, which enters the period we call the Renaissance. During this period of time, we have more scientific discovery, and music becomes very intellectual, although it's still mostly religious. Towards the end of this period of time, Renaissance, what we called rebirth, or basically it's a rediscovery of the Greek and Roman writings. And the Greeks believed that music had the power to really transform drama in a way that words alone couldn't do. So now, around 1600, we get the invention of opera. And opera changes things, and now, instead of having 4 to 6 people singing harmony, you have one person emoting with a small orchestra. Okay? However, a lot of the music during this period of time, which becomes more instrumental in nature because of technological developments, is still highly intellectual and very praiseful towards God, but because of royalty, primarily Louis XIV, music becomes more royal and more celebratory. Okay? And then with the death of Bach in 1750, we move into the period of time that we call the classical era. Primarily Mozart, that's the name that you know, Mozart and Beethoven, but really Mozart. And despite what most people think, most people portray like Mozart's Eine kleine Nachtmusik as being snobby and elitist. But in reality, Mozart's music was simpler and easier to listen to. It was really for the middle class. It's brilliant that way. Mozart's time was the time of the Enlightenment, which is also the time we get a lot of revolutions and we get democracy. There was an emerging middle class, and their number one consumption was music outside of work. It's something that we can't really understand today because we spend so much time on social media and the like, but basically everyone was some kind of amateur musician. Okay, following that period of time, we enter the Romantic period, approximately 1815. We get lots more genres. We start experimenting more with harmony. It becomes more emotional as kind of a reaction to Mozart's, although Mozart did have some really dark stuff, but Mozart's very light and put together things. They start experimenting with different forms, particularly what we call programmatic music. The Germans go into a very supernatural bent with opera, whereas the Italians go what we call later on verismo, very realism, tragedy, murdering your spouse, that kind of thing. And then the 20th century, where we have extreme technological advances, and we think nuclear, astrophysics, nuclear physics, that kind of thing. Music starts to reflect that mathematical style, particularly with atonal music and serialism, lots of experimental techniques, a way like using a piano in non-conventional ways, and so music history really does reflect what's going on in society. And even when you get, say, into the 1960s with the Vietnam War and a lot of the music being protests. We even had that with Green Day in 2004. Their piece called "American Idiot" was largely a protest of the administration at that time. So anyhow, so just to understand, music is a mirror. It's reflecting what's going on in society. So if you would do your best to at least have some broad concepts in mind, particularly 1517, Martin Luther's 95 Theses and the Protestant Reformation, think 1776, think World War II, things like that. Just get broad concept. It will really help you through this course. I hope this helps. Send me email with any questions. Thank you.